Lightning strike, thunder, blunder. None of it touches the most important sports story in the world today. Ryan Fitzpatrick explaining why he gained some weight this offseason. I have 7 kids, 7 birthdays during the offseason, 7 birthday cakes to eat. That's the panel. Let's go.
That's amazing.
Let him eat cakes.
7 kids born between January and April? That's some incredible planning from the Fitzmagic. We'll get to that in a second. It will be the disappointment that all others are measured against. It will be the cautionary sports tale every parent tells wide-eyed children. It will forever be the epitome of heartbreak in Tampa Bay. That's John Romano, Tampa Bay Times. The Lightning, after the best season in 23 years, yes, they were swept by the Blue Jackets, had to apologize on Twitter. And after the game, Coach John Cooper said, when you have the amount of points we had, it's a blessing and a curse. You don't play meaningful hockey for a long time. Then all of a sudden, you have to ramp it up. Not an excuse. It's reality. Clinton, how did this happen? Is it really reality? And is it really the disappointment that all others will be measured against?
I think it is. Listen, this was the year for the Bolts in so many different ways. Last year, people thought this was the year. They've been leading up to this for 3 seasons, and Cooper's only saying what he's saying because he's got to find some way to explain what happened. In Game 1, they go up 3-0 and ended up losing that game, which was insane. They got dominated in the neutral zone, forecheck to death. Look, 12 Blue Jackets scored in this series. 9 Bolts skaters had a single point. It was just a complete domination. To think that a team that had this many points during the regular season fell apart, there really is no excuse other than they just didn't show up. And I don't know how you explain that if you're a fan of the
Sarah Spain, do you buy Cooper's explanation here?
I buy that Clinton's right. Like, what do you say after
Clinton's
that? Not
right.
only did you get swept by a team that has never won a playoff series, but a team that didn't even make the playoffs till the penultimate day of the regular season. They eked their way in, and then they blew you away. Listen, there's no real explanation. You could use all the stuff of, well, you know, they coasted so long that they didn't know how to turn it on. But if you're as talented and as good as that team is to do what they did, then that's kind of tough to believe. And when it's the Lightning, who for 2 of the last 3 seasons before this got up in series and then lost games 6 and 7 to get eliminated. Now it's a culture change you're looking at. It's not just this team. It's why can't this franchise finish? And this
Sarah
is just the most
Spain,
egregious example.
blow up the whole team, she says. Ramona Shelburne, do you believe the explanation that, you know, we coasted for so long, it's hard to get ramped up?
Yeah, I buy it. I mean, I think when you go into the postseason, everyone else that you're playing has been working to get into the postseason. They've been positioning themselves. Yeah. And when you haven't played meaningful games in a while, it takes some time. But Tampa Bay had the best power play in the league, right? The best power play in like 20 years. They scored on 28% of their power plays. They were 1 for 6 in this series. they just, the ways that they had won, the ways they had dominated games, they weren't able to do it in this series. They never got on track. And I think it's because once it starts snowballing, it gets away from you in a series, and you find yourself where you're. I mean, that Twitter handle from the official team
that was amazing.
That was just tragic last night.
Kevin Blackistone, you're no stranger to disappointment on the ice, but we saw what happened with the Capitals last year. No. I mean that. You saw what happened, how the Capitals were able to put it together last year. How come the Lightning couldn't this year?
You know what? It kind of reminds me of what some stockbrokers were unable to do in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Oh, really?
Where all of their careers, they had been rolling with a bull market. All of a sudden, they got a bear market, and they didn't know what to do. So you look at the Lightning, and all of a sudden, they're playing from behind. You're talking about a team that won almost half of all of its games by 3 goals or more. And for the last 3 games in this series, they fell behind 2-0, and they could never, ever adjust to playing from behind. And I think that goes on the coaching staff and as well as the players for just being left in shock. They couldn't
left in shock. That's what I call the rest of this panel. When you're talking about bull markets and bear markets, Sarah, Shelburne, and Yates still trying to get their taxes in. Yates, after the horn, please.
Kucherov and Hedman ending up out of this series was a major psychological factor in Game 3, and I just don't think they were able to recover after that.
All right, now to the disappointment only some of others will be measured against. Here's Russell Westbrook after the Thunder go down 0-2 last night.
I'm going to take full responsibility of tonight because the way I played was unacceptable, and I'm going to be better.
Ramona Shelburne, I'm going to need you to read between the pinstripes there. Blazers won by 20 last night. They're up 2-0. How is Portland doing this to OKC?
When you see Dame Lillard diving on the ground like that, I mean, we're all he's playing some defense, right? And Dame and Russ have a history. I think people forget that when Russ said Paul George should have made the All-Star game it was last year. They said, who would you leave off? He said, Dame Lillard. I mean, this goes back, right? We've done segments on this show of these guys getting into it. Now, Nurkic was in the middle of that, or Nurk isn't there right now, and he was their main defensive guy in the middle. But I think this rivalry is heated. I think people haven't talked about how heated this is, and Dame and CJ McCollum took everything that happened last year when they got swept by the Pelicans and said, we're changing this, we're putting our reputation on the line. And you see Dame playing defense like that. That's not what he's known for, but that's
so specifically when you see Westbrook struggling the way he is, and George even, but it's more about what Portland's doing and not what OKC is doing, in your opinion. Sarah Spain, do you agree with that?
Well, OKC's not making any shots, but yeah.
Next question. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were Barry Trammell. My bad. Yeah, this is very much about Russell Westbrook because, listen, this is a team that has been flawed in the ways that we all knew. No outside shooting, lack of floor spacing, no depth, depend too much on their stars. When one of those stars is limited by a shoulder injury and the other one is limited by continuing to underperform at the highest and most important moments, you have to look at Westbrook. He's a minus 27 to Lillard's plus 27. They're shooting 16% from beyond the arc for the first 2 games of this series. That's the worst in the history of the postseason for 2 games consecutively for any team ever. So why we're looking at this and saying what's wrong? We know what's wrong. It's always been wrong. And if the superstars don't outplay everybody else, they're going to lose like they always do.
This is so interesting to me because in the NBA, I mean, it really goes to say teams with the best players are going to win. Right? I mean, that's what it's always been known as in the NBA. Oklahoma City, again, at risk to having maybe the 2 best players on the floor, if not 2 of the 3, and now down 0-2. Clinton Yates, how do you diagnose what's happened these first 2 games?
I think there's a lot to be said for what Ramona brought up at the end of her point, which is they're just not making shots. Sarah said it's 16%. That adds up to 10 total threes, 5 in each game. You cannot win an NBA playoff game making that few shots. And to me, it does come down to Westbrook. Unfortunately, when you're the guy getting all the triple-doubles, as you said, if it's not working, it ain't working for nobody. They're spacing the floor relatively well, but if you're throwing up bricks, who cares? The Blazers are in their heads, and they know that, and that's what they're afraid of.
And Clinton Yates says the Blazers are in the Thunder head. Do you agree with that, Kevin Blackistone?
Well, I think the Blazers are in the Blazers' head. You know, a few years ago, we talked about Terry Stotts having to replace 4 starters in the fabulous year he had. And people said he's really coach of the year. They go into the playoffs, no Nurkic. Everybody says, wow, well, the guards are going to have to pick up the scoring. Guess what? The guards picked up the scoring, and they're playing fabulous defense on top of that, and they're hustling. Terry Stotts has a way of inspiring those guys to take it to a level that is needed for them to win, and that's how they're winning this.
Breaking down the seeds going into the postseason, a lot of people circled this was the matchup at 3. That the 6 could knock off at 3. Does anybody believe the Thunder can come back here at this point after seeing the first 2 games? Ramona, you're still giving that a chance.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you know, as Rachel Nichols always says, it's make or miss league, right? So they've been missing everything. If they just start to make some of their outside shots, they can get right back in this. I mean, you've lost 2 road games.
I would want to give points to Rachel Nichols, but did she really coin the phrase, it's a make or miss league? Are we really?
I mean, it's a whole segment on her show. Okay?
You know, I always said, a series doesn't start till the home team loses, so I believe. We'll move on now to disappointment with a Bostonian flair. Chris Sale is just getting bombed this year. So the Yankees beat the Red Sox last night. I mean, the uninjured Yankees, I should say. Clint Frazier, Mike Tauchman. Sale has fallen to 0-4 in this season. Let's listen to him after the game.
Just flat out stink right now. I don't know what it is. It's flat out embarrassing for my family, for my team, for our fans. This is about as bad as it gets.
Sarah Spain, how worried should Boston be with Sale? How worried they should be with the Red Sox right now?
Whew. Yeah, I mean, Sale's already accumulated as many losses this year as he did all of last year. That's obviously a worry. But their starting ERA is the worst in the history of the team through 18 games. They've allowed more runs than any other staff in baseball. And oh, by the way, Mookie Betts is hitting .212. So if you're just worried about Sale, you might need to look at how the rest of the team is underperforming. There's still plenty of time. It's early, but it's not just about Sale. They haven't won every game that he hasn't started either. So it's a team effort.
Duly noted. Let me ask you this then, Clinton Yates. Can the Red Sox be the Red Sox if Chris Sale isn't Chris Sale?
You know, I do think they can be, but I think that Chris Sale's problems are bigger than they're willing to admit. Listen, going back to spring training, he was having issues with how he was delivering the ball. And basically now, it's not a velocity issue, it's a location issue. Guys have a .01 exit velos on singles. Are you kidding me? That means that they're hitting the ball extremely hard, and they know exactly where it's coming. He's leaving a lot of stuff arm side, which to me is something you should be able to fix mechanically by this point of the season. What were you in spring training for if that's not working? I have a huge concern about where Chris Sale is going to be further down the line this
Location, location, location. Something I came up when I was a realtor for some time. Reality Realty is what we call it. Safari Realty in Staten Island. That's my uncle. Go check it out. My aunt. Kevin Blackistell, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at Sale's line right now. His hits per 9 innings have almost doubled to 11.5. He's all over the place. He's getting hit hard. When he's not getting hit hard, he's getting hit and it's going right through the infield. It's a real problem for that team right now. And as you pointed out, Mookie Betts isn't hitting, so the offense is middle of the road right now. They've got a lot of issues that nobody saw coming. And guess what? He's not the only pitcher struggling. I mean, right now, you talk about Price being the best pitcher the Red Sox have, and he's a guy that they love to hate. So this is a real problem for the Red Sox going forward.
Shelburne.
Yeah, I was worried about Chris Sale when his velocity was down, because then you thought, okay, maybe there's something structurally wrong with his arm. Maybe he's just working his way back from spring training. He was hitting 97 yesterday. This wasn't a velocity issue. And I think in some ways you get to you go, okay, well, that's good. At least he's still able to bring it. He's still able to get it to 97. It's just mental. Alex Cora was saying after the game, you know, he thinks his best pitching is right around the corner. They've just called up his catcher. Sandy Leone is back there. He has one of the best best defensive catchers in the game. He's like his personal catcher. If that couldn't get it done, I don't know what can. And maybe this is rock bottom for them, but he doesn't seem right at all.
Darius Spain after the horn.
Yeah, silver lining for the Red Sox is Alex Cora did say because of the deep run in the postseason last year, he gave his guys less work, the starting pitchers, in spring training. So the chances are that maybe they're just behind and things start to pick up once they get into a rhythm.
And Yates?
I'm not sure how that's a silver lining. All the games count the same. You get back this point in the season, you got issues.
They could
with
get
your
better
staff,
versus
period.
if it's not because of rust, then they're just bad.
Yeah.